Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host Edmond. Kizito. On Friday tonight, we'll be looking at the week just gone by. Some of the issues we'll look at. The FDC victory in Kasese, much expected, but the margin was astounding. 30,000 votes, 37,000 votes. The difference between the FDC winning candidate and the NRM candidate. 6 losses in a row. What is happening to the NRM? We'll look at that. The succession debate in the party, the two leading parties, the NRM and the FDC. Dr. Vesja is set to be replaced as party president by either Nathan Nandla Mafabi, Mujisha Muntu, or Geoffrey Kanya. Only Geoffrey Kanya and Nandla Mafabi have picked nomination forms. Mujisha Muntu is expected to be nominated tomorrow. Will Besja's exit strengthen that party, or will it make it weaker? Also, could Besja come back as flag bearer, because the FDC constitution allows him to do that? In the NRM, will President Museveni let go? He's not shown many signs of wanting to leave the helm. Recently, he said nobody can succeed him because he hasn't seen anyone with the qualities that he possesses. We'll talk about Makere Bariamureba, Titanic fall from the helm. He took the university to the top 10 top universities in Africa using the Webometric rankings. Was this a good thing to let the man go? We'll also talk about the DRC, what happened at the summit of several heads of state coming into town. We'll talk about that. Our guest tonight, Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, legal consultant at AKIJUL, also a well-known commentator on political and social issues. You're most welcome, Mr. Nicholas Opiyo.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all the listeners and those who are viewing us online.
We're also joined by Mr. Patrick Kaboyo, chairman of the Anti-Corruption Coalition in Uganda, also a member of the CEDU election monitoring team. You're most welcome, Mr. Patrick Kaboyo.
Thank you very much, and good evening, listeners.
We expect to be joined by Mr. Kintu, Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the President. Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, the victory in Kasese, did it take you by surprise?
No, not really. I mean, you would be overly optimistic to have expected otherwise. But I think it is in order to start by congratulating the Honorable Winnie Kiza for a victory well earned. My concern really is, in the very first place, how did we get here? The process leading to the by-election, in my view, is very telling. You have a court case at the Constitutional Court, at the Court of Appeal, against the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission refuses to defend itself deliberately, so that the case is lost, and thereby giving rise to the by-election. That in my view is very telling. If it had only happened once, you would say it was a coincidence or just mere incompetence. But it happened not just once. In Entebbe, the same thing happened. Where the commission that, by the way, has been hiring private lawyers to prosecute its cases across the country, well over 20 lawyers, and these are high-profile lawyers, fails to defend a case at the Constitutional Court, and then we end up in a by-election. I think that needs to be interrogated further. But to come back to the issue of Kasese, I think that Kasese presents a difficult position for the NRM. There is a latent militant attitude in Kasese. Even the king was a rebel.
Yes.
He was a rebel. He came down from the mountains under an agreement and then became a king. So there is generally a militant attitude in Kasese, which is very complex. But secondly, I think, in fact, my view is that the NRM hasn't won any by-election, because the Bukenya by-election was actually a protest vote against the NRM for their treatment of Bukenya. So the NRM has not, in my view, won any by-election. They have lost all of them. And I think the reason they are losing by-elections are two. One is principally a general disgust in the population for the quality of services, delivery of services in this country. I think people are generally upset about it. And everywhere you go, you have promises and promises and promises that have never been fulfilled. And I think that this is getting to the people, and the people are saying, look, you can't take us for a ride. Even promises for 2 districts were not enough to sway people to vote for the NRM candidate. So generally, I think that's the trend. And believe me, any by-election that is going to come up, the movement have a difficult time convincing people otherwise, because they've been here, they've said so many things, they haven't done them. And people ask the questions: why do we still have bad roads? Why do we have bad schools? Why do we have poor quality education? Why is our health center having no medicine? These questions are not being answered by the NRM. So I think that people are actually protesting for generally these failures by the government. The third factor that I think is caused the movement to lose in Kasese is the whole Kionga factor. For a very long time, Dr. Kionga was the kingmaker in the region. In fact, so much so that he even opposed the restoration of the kingdom. And that didn't go down well with the people. He's so much loathed by the people, you know. And therefore, people have been longing for an opportunity to get back at him. Because all these elections boiled down to the question of the kingdom. It had kind of a Uganda spin to it. You know, you had all these kingdom issues that were also part of the electoral process. And I think that Kionga's burden could have played against the NRM party in the Kasese election. And I think that that's crucial, because the heavy deployment in Kasese, granted there was a bit of, you know, some clashes there before the elections came up, but there was no justification for the rather heavy deployment in Kasese. And I think that Kionga and his own problems might have caused the NRM to lose the elections in Kasese. And I think that need not just be you know, brushed away as so remote. It is not so remote, because you have a Kionga that, in my view, is trying to posture as a probable successor. You know, he sees himself being very close to the line of succession.
To the president?
Yeah.
He's the only minister who's been minister from day one.
Yes.
The only individual who's been a minister throughout Museveni's rule, yes, without being dropped even for a day.
Yes. So I think he looks at himself as one of those guys who are close
Mr.
to
Kionga was dropped. He was Minister of Finance at one time, or the first minister.
He was the first. What about Kionganomics? After Ponsiano Mlema, professor.
But then thereafter he was dropped for a long time, for about 4 or 5 years.
I'll refresh my memory on that.
He came back as Minister of Health.
Thank you for that. Yes, Nicholas.
So the Kionga factor could have caused the NRM, you know, their loss in Kasese.
Right.
But all said, it may not necessarily reflect, you know, a powerful opposition or a powerful FDC, but really just a vote of protest against
a weak ruling party,
against a failure to deliver on basic services in the country. That's my reading of.
That's your reading of the yes, my friend. Well, we've just been doing my Mr. Kintu Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the President. You're most welcome, Mr. Kintu Nyago. Patrick, what's your reading of the victory of the FDC in Kasese?
Thank you very much. And I should say the first thing should be to congratulate the people of Kasese and Ugandans at that. What I should say is that despite all that has happened, viewed on television, heard on radio, felt on the ground, perceived in the mains, we still see that people have made a choice. They have got the leaders that they have accepted, and I wish. And to me, I take it that much as the members of parliament have several roles, but people have now woken up to realize that the key roles to them and to us as a populace is purely representation and oversight. You realize that people have reacted so, despite the deployment as has been noted and viewed on different media arena, but people have withstood the challenges and cast their vote. I should also make a comment about the conduct of the Electoral Commission. With due respect, there is more that we are demanding from the Electoral Commission. By-elections might not be ruled out, but how frequent they are in this country, they infringe on the taxpayer. People need to know how much money is spent on a fresh election. countrywide. So if you compute that money spent openly and in closed arena, you'll find that that very money could be used for teachers' salaries, could be used for helping the Ebola victims, medicine stocks, mention it. And the Electoral Commission...
Let's try to understand the victory itself. What's your reading in it? What undercurrents do you see?
The victory is...
The NRM has been losing. The only time they didn't lose when the Bukenya told the president not to come campaign for. Everywhere he goes to campaign, there's a loss. So that's good.
I should say the victory is a people's victory. Peoples have answered the call. And maybe the advice I should give to the NRM group is to do more of listening, to do more of using their antennas, feeling. Gone are the days when we can use pomp or hump or discard people's views, but you have to be on the ground, put your ear keenly, listen to what people are saying, and assess yourself how you've delivered, and make sure that if you have the evaluation mechanisms to assess how you've delivered,
yes,
then you get back on the right track.
Suppose they held by-elections for all the MPs. What do you think will be the count at this?
I think the trend of monitoring and vigilance that the population has had in these by-elections are a clear testimony that the country is becomingly interested in how people can protect their vote. So this is projecting us to what we are expecting in the near future, that men and women are ready to protect their vote because they know that a vote counts. And they also see it as a golden chance. They know that if one wins, really, they know
can go home.
Yes.
Listeners, this is Spectrum Radio, and tonight we're reviewing the week. Mr. Kintu, what are you going to the president? Everywhere he goes, his candidate loses. What's the plan going to be?
Bad luck.
No, to start with, the people who have spoken before me, they have made very good presentations, but some of which, especially with Mr. my brother here, the lawyer,
yes,
Mr. Opiyo, I see things differently from his perspective. Well, to start with, listeners, I'm sure are aware that there's no, serious political crisis, because the NRM, in the last polls that have just taken place about a year ago, won by more than 75% in Parliament.
No, but there's a question mark on that victory. Every primary election is being lost.
Have won by more than 75% in Parliament. So they control more than 75% in Parliament. But now, secondly, in the local governments, the NRM has about 90% of all LC5s and a much higher number at LC3. So really, they are definitely the dominant political force. And well, these incremental losses may mean a lot for those minute parties. But in terms of the real politics, that's a fact.
Go on, sir.
In terms of those real politics, it doesn't really shake much on the NRM. But that said, this is really, in my view, what's occurring. I think it vindicates what President Museveni and the NRM stand for. What is enshrined in, I think, Article 1 of the Constitution. What really took Museveni to the bush and the NRM? To return power to the people. Whereby, regardless of who wins, that's respected. When the people speak, that's respected. That is unprecedented in our history. Whether in the 60 years of colonialism, or Bote 1 or Bote 2 or Idi Amin. So that fact is a clear vindication of the good leadership, of the commitment to democracy by President Museveni and the NRM. Now, on the issues of these by-elections, I think we should take each on a case-by-case basis. Let's take Rengo. If we were to follow the pundits, one would have imagined that Mr. Nsambu would possibly get 5% of the polls. I mean, he was a man not from that constituency. He was a man who was claimed to have a foul mouth, to have abused the Kabaka and nearly everybody else. But then when the polls came out,
after the Chiboko squad had appeared and disappeared.
That's
well, we saw them on television.
And we are told that they were from the FDC.
with guns.
So maybe that's a rebel group. No, that's what they told. I mean, that's not. No, look at all DP. Look at all. At one time, Madame Nambozi was beaten by DP people in the court of the High Court.
They didn't have guns, did they?
Well, she was bleeding, and that's bad enough. So I mean, when I talk about goons, fellow DPs beat up Madame Nambozi, and the High Court, whatever. Mr. Opiyo must have followed that, but he never mentioned. So the point I'm trying to make, the same goons and things were taken to ring. They're the ones we saw on TV. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that Mr. Zambo got, I think, 48% of the poll.
It's an outstanding performance.
Oh yes. So the point I'm trying to make, that does not in any way illustrate that the NRM lost, but more from a perspective of analysis. Mr. Nsubuga was a very strong candidate, a man who had been standing in that constituency for 20 years, most of which has been losing to NRM. He stood donkey times against Honorable Sendawula, losing visibly all the time.
Yes.
Then he stood, after Sendawula left, he stood against Dr. Rwanga, lost. Won after Dr. Rwanga once, then lost to Mbabane. But I mean, he's been a perennial loser, but I mean, consistent in the constituency. So when you bring a man from outside the constituency to stand against that kind of character, I mean, Nsubuga was a formidable man because of that. More or less like an institution within the party, whatever, and even the ethnic mix of that place. Now, that's why this man got 48%. That's why this man nearly won. And by the way, the NRM is going to court. So, on the other hand, the lady we are talking about in Kasese is a formidable person. That is something. Oh yeah. She's formidable. A populist, somebody who is accommodating to all persuasions, who attends all functions regardless of political creed. She cuts across, near alike to Ken Luchamuzi in Bagasawa. But that's something that nobody talks about. They talk about so she's a formidable candidate. She is not somebody who, so that is the starting point, that she was a formidable candidate and an incumbent, and she had a sympathy vote for having, I mean, there were all kinds of innuendos that are being unleashed that the government has brought her down or something of that nature. So really, those are factors. Now, issues like, for example, deployment of police. That deployment of police is what has enabled, everywhere it goes, security, peaceful elections, and the people to speak with one voice. Well, Chiyonga, I would imagine, is a very popular man because he's, in as much as he has not been minister consistently, because when he was minister of finance, he was dropped at one time for about 5 years or so. And then he came back as Minister of Health, and I think he became National Political Commissar. Or before, either one of those two preceded the other after he had been dropped. But one thing he has been, he is possibly one of the longest serving members of parliament. Ever since the NRC came.
He's been MP.
Yes, and he hasn't been MP in Kampala. He has been MP in that very place people are claiming he's not popular. So there must be something about him. I mean, it must be. For sure. There's even Jesus had people who oppose the Jews themselves crucified them. So Opiyo must be a Christian. The Jews themselves are the ones that crucified. Are you a Christian? That's fine. That's fine. If you are Muslim, whatever you have, whatever creed you make. Even Jesus had opponents. In fact, Pontius Pilate sympathized with Jesus' case. But the Jews said, he said, should we crucify Barnabas or Christ? They said, Jesus. Now the point really is, Jude has been a member of parliament for that place for a long time. There must be something about him. I mean, there must be, he must be popular. Now, on the issue of disgust and services, look, the services Ugandans are enjoying now
are very good.
Whether Uganda is a developing country, that's a certain point. Yes, and it's not Museveni or the NRM that made Uganda a developing country. Colonialism played a very key role in that. They were here for 60 years. How many schools did they build in Guru? Let me finish up. I didn't talk when you were talking. No, let me finish up. For example, in Guru, they all left there one secondary school after 60 years. How many schools are in Guru or in Impiji? How many schools or Wakiso? How many schools were there? Secondary schools in Wakiso? Hardly any school. And now Wakiso itself, about 500 secondary schools. So the services Ugandans are enjoying under the NRM are unprecedented in terms of one, their availability and quality.
All right. Okay.
Whether it's roads, whether it's schooling, whether it's health, any service Ugandans are enjoying now under Museveni is qualitatively.
All right, we have to move forward. It's not the same. You spoke about you spoke about the NRM planning to petition in the Court of South. Apparently, it would appear that the time has already elapsed. Maybe you'll do
whatever it is, but
maybe you'll do something else instead. Very briefly, Nicholas, we have to move forward.
A candid diagnosis of the problem is what Kintu has not seen. What doesn't want to do.
That services are better.
We have to move forward.
That services are better than under colonialism or under
Our time
NRM begins to have that kind of attitude. They could still losing.
that they have got 75% in parliament. These are all empirical facts which you can verify.
And respond to this concern.
No.
Being dismissive is not going to
These are
help
facts. Services are much better than under Obote 1 or Obote 2 or Idi Amin.
we're going to talk about the President Museveni succession and the FD succession, but maybe before we do that, can we talk about the Vice Chancellor's race in Makerere? Professor Bariamreba has been dropped. Is that going to lower the rankings of Makerere? Web Metrics, he went up to number 8 on the African continent. Patrick?
I don't think his exit will lower the ranking, because he has been working on a framework that is existing. He hasn't been an individual, he has been working as a team leader. So I believe that with a team that he leaves behind, they will be able to steward the institution to great heights. But again, I should say that his exit is not the end of his contribution in itself. He can still make any contribution in any engagement.
At Makerere?
At Makerere still.
Nicholas, what's your reading?
Well, it's the entire problem, and you see, the thing is, for me, I would prefer. Makerere is supposed to be the highest institution of learning in this country. It's supposed to be the center for innovation, for knowledge production, for graduating students who are indeed future leaders of this country. And I think that the management of Makerere needs to be revisited, both in terms of processes of electing the Vice Chancellor, but also in terms of the independence of the institution. Because I think that the University and Other Tertiary Institutions Act is a very loosely put together law that does not provide for a transparent, independent process that will give us the best Vice Chancellor. I think that we need to go back to the drawing board, a very competitive process, a process that looks at quality and promise to deliver this university to the land that we want it to be, the promised land, or back to the glory days. Because I think the process of electing a Vice Chancellor, the whole squabbling, undermines Makerere's credibility. That you have professors and doctors who are supposed to teach future leaders themselves failing to hold together.
One of them taught President Kagame, actually.
Exactly. So I mean, my honest view is, I haven't had the detailed reading of the process, but I think that the law, the process of election of Vice Chancellor needed to be revisited to be able to give us the best choice. I think what we have now, what we've been getting, is a convenient choice, not necessarily the best choice, because the process hasn't been competitive enough, hasn't been transparent and open to public scrutiny and review. I think it's more or less a closed process. I think that the credibility of the Vice Chancellor must be vetted through a public process, so that people who own this university can have a say in who runs the university.
Mr. Chinija, Bariamreba has rejected the decision of the Senate.
Well, I don't know the details, but about Bariamreba, clearly he has left a very positive mark on the university, because before Bariamreba, and this is just a few years ago, about 2-3 years ago.
2 years.
I think Makerere was ranked 50th in Africa or something like that.
Now it's number 8.
Yeah, now it's number 8. So really, Bariamreba must have done one or two things in the right way to put Makerere on the map. One of the things he did for sure, because it was publications, but having those publications on the internet, and possibly also encouraging research and so forth, even motivation. So really, I think many Ugandans are going to miss him at the helm of that university.
Will it go down?
No, that's a difficult one. I'm sure others have got. He's not just the only one, but he himself has been a giant in what he has done.
Well, you see, the thing is, for me, all these things you call innovations coming through Makerere, not innovations.
What do you mean?
All this car that you see is being produced with bomb detecting equipment, and they're not innovations.
They reinvented the wheel first.
Simply buying spare parts and putting them together.
First, they had to reinvent the wheel and build a car around it.
Qualified to be innovations, which is a good start anyway. It's a good start anyway. It's a very good start. Make no mistake about it. It's a good start. And I think that Bariamreba, whatever he has done, it is simply putting publications online. But also, more importantly, he was able to attract back to this country one of the key leading scholars of the world, Mamdani. He now sits at Makerere. He came back from the US. These are positive developments. There were investments in research that has been started, but again, this hasn't had the impact that I would want to see for universities like Makerere, because my view is we need to begin to produce knowledge. We must contribute to the body of knowledge. Makerere is just producing graduates, not contributing to the body of knowledge.
Well, but the other things that he had in mind, investments, he hired one of the most respected investment experts, Patrick Mutimba. He hired him from Standard Chartered Bank. He took a big pay cut to accept a smaller job at Makerere because of he must have had a certain vision, not just for the academics.
He did have a vision. The problem is that the vision wasn't shared. I think it was a one vision.
Sometimes visionaries are like that.
The one for the president.
Well, this is Spectrum already.
Buy-in from his colleagues.
We'll go for a break. We'll be back. We'll talk about the succession debate both in the NRM and the FDC. Dr. Besdia is leaving the helm of the party. Will President Museveni follow suit?
You can pay, you can buy, pay your bills, pay school fees, send cash overseas, pay taxi fees, and salaries, anything you need.
You can do anything with MTN Mobile Money. And now, for the first time in Uganda, you can even pay your electricity bills. Go to your MTN Mobile Money menu, select Pay Bills, select Umeme Touch Pay, and follow the prompts.
MTN. Everywhere you go.
John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He is just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special.
You've earned it. Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight we're reviewing the week of panelists. Mr. Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the President. Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, Legal Consultant at AKIJUL, also a commentator on political and social issues. And Mr. Patrick Kaboyo, Chairman of the Anti-Corruption Coalition in Uganda, also a member of the CEDU Election Monitoring Team. You can contribute to this discussion by sending in your question, message or comment to 7197. That is Spectrum, message, question or comment. Send it 7197. So let's talk about the succession debate in the NRM and the FDC. President Museveni said recently he has not seen a single person, not even me or my friend Mr. Nyago, among those who can replace him and lead this country the way it should be. Now, Dr. Besdia is leaving the helm of the party. We don't know whether he might be brought as presidential flag bearer for that party. Nathan Nandala Mafabi, Mujisha Muntu, Geoffrey Kanya are seen as the front runners. We're hearing reports of a sharp division within the party. Patrick, what's your read? What do you think is going to happen in the FDC, first of all?
I think we are in a democracy that is growing, I should say. Both the opposition and government should be ready to learn from each other. But to take it on from the opposition, they should be moving to show the NRM that leadership can change. And the picking of nomination forms and trying to challenge the retired Colonel Doctor, to me, is a step ahead to show that even the big gun can sound, but there can be challenge. That also takes courageous men and women to make that attempt. But if you follow up what has been happening in the biggest party in the country, whoever tries to attempt to challenge His Excellency the President for that position has first coil and sometimes reflect on the implications or consequences.
Let's first talk about the FDC, the opposition party. We'll talk about the NRM at some stage. What do you think is going to be going through the minds of the people as they choose the successor to Dr. Besigye?
You see, when you mention of the FDC, you can't rule out the issue of personality of the leader. So there are two issues that are going to play here: the charisma and the personality of the leader across board, and the suitable replacement that is going to come. Watch the space. Whoever takes that mantle will be judged depending on the already existing charismatic leadership and the courage that the current leader has. So to me, those are going to be the basics for any other person.
Who do you think is going to take it?
That could be a hard question for me. But I think the one who is charismatic, who is exemplary these days, they say the one with stamina will have to live to that.
Been through walk to work.
It could be.
Nicholas,
so Edmond, the FDC, like the NRM, is built around a powerful individual. They are held together by the charisma, by the courage, by the nature of their leaders. President Museveni is a powerful person in NRM. His word is law. Dr. Besigye is a powerful person in FDC. The exits of either of these two men from these parties will leave their parties significantly weak. I think the FDC will never be any stronger than it has been under Besigye. Not that I'm undermining the guys who are standing for his office, but that the nature of leadership that was offered by Besigye will not be offered by anybody else who is posturing to stand to replace him. And that Mafabi is no Kizza Besigye. Muntu is no Kizza Besigye. So there's going to be a structural readjustment in the FDC that will leave the FDC significantly weak in my view. I think that they're going to move away from being the aggressive party to a more, ideologue party, a party of discussion and ideas,
The party of Chimeza.
Yeah, because I don't see Nandala getting onto the streets and taking on the police. I don't see Muntu doing that. I don't see Kanya doing that. I think it's going to be a significantly weak party. And again, I pray that I'm wrong. I think we're going to see emotional withdrawals from active participation of many key members of the FDC. Because many of these people hang around FDC because of Besigye. I don't see a role for the Iron Lady, Ingrid, beyond Besigye. I don't see a role for people like, Salam Musumba in the absence of Besigye. Besigye has been the glue that has held that party together. So that party is, in my view, on its way to a path of rediscovery. That will leave it significantly weak for the meantime. If they will emerge, that will be a question that will emerge later. But I think that it's going to be a very weak party.
Let's try to do some scenario forecasting. Two scenarios. President Museveni leaves the NRM or President Museveni stays. Besigye leaves the FDC or Besigye stays as flag bearer. Which of these two are, the more desired? Well, give us a scenario of if Museveni staying and Besigye staying as flag bearer and Museveni leaving and Besigye leaving.
Well, I think Besigye is leaving not because he wants to leave, but because he's tired of fighting a losing battle. I think if Besigye was winning,
well, he's not ruled out standing again for president.
Well, if Besigye was winning, I don't think he would have quit. I doubt it. I think that he's just exhausted his energy. But I think to compare Besigye's exit with Museveni's exit is rather unfair, because these are two different parties. One is a small one is a bigger one. One is more powerful, the other is not. But I think that I don't think in any way this is going to put pressure on President Museveni to follow suit.
Mr. Kintu,
because President Museveni takes no lessons from FDC. At least I can tell you.
Some people say he doesn't even take lessons from his advisors. They say he advises his advisors. Mr. Kintu,
yes, please.
What's going to happen what do you think is going to happen in the FDC? Who's going to take it in that party?
No, the starting point is
that you love to hate.
The issue, to start with, it's not true that President Museveni's word is law in the NRM.
He's a culture.
No, that's a wrong interpretation, Mr. Nicholas Opiyo. With all due respect, because look, we are in some parties, when people have dissenting views, they are kicked out. In some parties, I remember my sister Betty Kamina, very articulate and celebral.
She had a few dissenting views.
Very articulate and cerebral woman, strong-spirited. But the people she was with, that they started one of the parties in town with, couldn't stand her articulation. And they kicked her out of the party very unceremoniously. But in the NRM, to the best of my knowledge, there's a young man called Mr. Ansereko, another one called Mr. Chikubo. And, if...
the list is long.
Oh, the list is long.
The last election you had only two. This time you can't count.
They all went on their own volition. Please, they all went on their own volition. And they are free. This is a democracy. But now, more fundamentally, or equally fundamentally, succession is not new in the NRM. In fact, even under more difficult circumstances.
Right, during the rebel.
Do remember,
Chairman Lule left the position.
President of the NRM was Professor Lule, a national hero.
NRM, the party of the rebel group?
Please, let me talk. The first chairman of the NRM was Professor Yusuf Chironde Lule, a national hero. When he passed away, there was a transition. Many of our leaders have passed on, and there's been Dr. Kiseka. But transition in the NRM is an ongoing process. It's not like, say, some algebra kind of philosophy or whatever equation. It's ongoing because we hold elections regularly within the party and at national level. People are voted in and out of power regularly. For example, how many of our senior leaders who are in the NRC are still serving? We had people like Madame Zizing, Captain Zizing. Is she still in the echelons of the top leadership of the party? People like Mr. Kayonde in the NRC, Bush, whatever.
Yes.
See, and many others. People like Sirwanga. So you find, but because we are democratic, it's a democratic institution. The issue of transition is not like some obscure equation that on X whatever. No, it's ongoing and live and living and healthy, even as I speak now. And it has never rocked the NRM. Now, regarding Museveni's standing again or not, that has been clearly spelled out, both within the party constitution and in the national constitution.
Yes.
That power is derived from the people.
Right.
There are some limitations, like age, but we are told that the man is only 66.
You are told.
That's what evidence indicates. I mean,
you believe that.
For example, his marriage certificate that was.
You're talking about the president. The president was born in 1944 officially. We know that.
So now, should we
68? I think.
Whatever it is, the point is, should we now? Now, let's put it this way.
That's the official record. The president.
Let's put it this way. Are rights the same for everybody? Our rights, because if you want him not to stand, let us have a policy that after you have been in office for 2 terms or whatever, don't stand again, and it becomes a uniform policy.
You support the restoration of the term limits?
Let's amend the constitution.
Return term limits.
We can amend the constitution to return term limits, or we can amend the constitution to ensure that anybody in any elective office stands for only 2 terms. Because should we make laws for individuals? Because those who are talking about term limits are looking at Museveni. Should we make laws for Edmond Kizito? We make a national law for Edmond Kizito. That's not the kind of country I would like to live in, or kind of polity for one. So we should make objective laws for posterity, not just look at Edmond Kizito or whatever Mr. So now, so that's but you will get your turn. Yes. So clearly, look, Mr. Museveni about succession, about his being at the helm, that is very clear. If the party, general, whatever, the primaries, the national conference, they say that Mr. Museveni is not up to it, then they will elect somebody else. It has ever occurred when Mr. Lule died. And the NRM held elections, and Mr. Museveni, and people was talking about that anybody who stands against Museveni is kicked out. Dr. Kiseka stood against Mr. Museveni in Lubiri. And the NRC voted for Mr. Museveni, and Dr. Kiseka became Prime Minister, wasn't kicked out, and later on elevated to become Vice President. So really, these are traditional.
He learned about his firing as he was boarding a plane at the airport.
I mean, that's not an issue.
The more I listen to Kintu,
why didn't he question? Why didn't he being appointed?
The more I listen to Kintu,
and he only questions he's being
speak like that. The more I feel.
But these are facts and
okay. The more I hear Nyago, the more I hear other people speak like that, the more I think President Museveni is right. Surely, if you have people around you who think like that, you cannot see somebody else above you leading this country. Because
I didn't say that. Ugandans are going to decide on that one. That's
Go on, Nicholas.
Can I please make the point?
Yes.
The point that I make is, if you have people around President Museveni who are being told in their faces that you are not capable of leading the country,
and they clap their hands.
He didn't say that. I was there, you were not there, so he didn't say that.
And they clap and then they smile.
Nah, Museveni didn't say
you really pity him. You do, because if I were a minister and I'm being told, look, you have no vision to lead this country, I would be the first to resign. I would be the first to walk away. But you have people around him who are told off in their faces, you can't do this, you can't do this, and they clap. I worry for this country. I do, I really do. Secondly, I think we need to put this discussion in context.
Yes.
The NRM party we know was not the party Seka belonged to. It was a party that was, at least in theory or in law, was supposed to have been formed after we returned to multi-party politics.
All right. Okay. Let's keep.
What is talking
in the interest
about
of
is
time.
the rebel outfit that took over power in 1986. That's a
not
different
an outfit.
entity.
It's a rebel organization that defeated a sitting government.
That is
That's not a simple thing.
entity.
People have even failed to whatever.
You can call it an outfit.
Not an outfit. I don't know if it means something.
Let's look at the significance of that.
It's a formidable political organization that
Nicholas,
removed the sitting government. That is not something. No.
It's nomenclature. Let's
An
call it what
outfit
you
is
want.
something that's very.
Let's look at the substance of it.
So I do think
What's the
that-
substantial
I do think
difference?
that these arguments are overstretching. It's false. It's deceitful. The party we know, the NRMO, was not formed in 1984.
What's the substantial difference?
The substantial difference is, of course, not said.
Go on.
The party that was NRM, because the NRM for a long time denied they were not a party, that they were just an organization.
It's still a movement,
Yeah?
really.
An organized party, it's a registered party.
Right.
And that's
It's
the
a
party.
movement. It's a national movement.
But to talk about again,
Like, say the
talking
ANC.
of amending laws for individuals, when they were removing term limits, it was done for an individual's benefit.
All right. Let's hear from the listeners. You can text us.
Sorry, we
All
can't-
right.
we can't hear
No,
it.
please.
It's all right.
There's nowhere in that
We'll
law.
hear from
There's
the
nowhere in
listeners.
that law that they say that only Mr. Museveni will be.
This is Spectrum on Radio 1. You can
From that law.
contribute by sending your text message. Send your text message to 7197. That is Spectrum. Message, question or comment, send it to 7197. Type the word Spectrum in your phone browser. Message, question or comment, send it to 7197. Patrick.
Thank you very much. I think when we are discussing these topics, we need to put the perspective of what the listeners are getting from us.
Yes.
The best judges are those members of the public. I want to make a correction that I don't think the president of this country is 66 years.
He's 68. officially.
Unless we want to say that the longer you stay in power, the younger you grow.
He's actually
But
68.
it's beyond that. And
He's 68. You're right. He's actually 68 years old.
yes, I should also say that as citizens and young people of this country, we are watching the events as they unfold. We know very well that the package that the NRM could be selling requires repackaging or requires rebranding. So in that rebranding, it should put in context how the relation with other parties is put to play. Most young people, children, name it, are watching the electoral violence on television. They are watching the beatings, they are watching the hooliganism that has turned into an election.
Yes, you're right.
It could be the either way, because we have seen policemen hitting, and I should say, Edmond, that the presence of the military in any election, leave alone police, but the military, whether in or not in uniform, shouldn't arise. They should be out of any election.
Let's move on. Let's talk about the Great Lakes.
On that one. Look, the military is a healthy influence. For example, take the Olympics in Britain. Take the Olympics in Britain. You find that the military was brought in to safeguard security. That is the same thing. That is the same thing that occurs in Uganda and whatever in national defense. When the security, the military comes in the very
Conference. 11 countries from the Great Lakes region
So are the Olympics militarized?
attended the DRC summit in Kampala. Nicholas and both Rwanda and DRC, their heads of state attended. They agreed to form a regional force to deal with the M23 rebels, but it seems President Kabila or some of his cohorts are not happy with it. They distrust some regional leaders. What's going to happen, Nicholas?
Well, two things. I think that Rwanda and Uganda's involvement, plus the other countries' involvement, in attempting to solve the problem of DRC is a healthy initiative, and I think that it needs to be encouraged. My only problem, though, is with the proposals.
Yes.
I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that what DRC needs is not another force to go and occupy their territory.
Oh.
Whatever name you call it, whether it being an international force, being a UN force, being an AU force. Having forces in the DRC might only be a short-term solution to put it around the fire. But I think that long-term solution to DRC's problem lies in two things. One is helping the likely illegitimate, if not weak government in Kinshasa to be able to have absolute control over its territory. Congo is a vast country. The problem has been that you have had weak governments in Kinshasa, and then these weak governments have no control over the entire country. I think that regional efforts must be concentrated in strengthening the government in Kinshasa to be able to have full control over their territory.
How do they do that?
Deploying troops in the DRC would only be to delegitimize the government of the DRC. Is to accept that this government cannot protect you, and therefore we must protect you. That sends the wrong message. I think what we should be doing is empowering that government to be able to have full control of its territory. Secondly, the problem, justification of Rwanda's involvement, Uganda's involvement in the DRC is because some negative forces from these countries are hiding in the DRC. Why in the very first place have they found solace in the DRC? Partly because of the weak government in Kinshasa, but also mainly because of the democratic deficiencies in these countries. If Rwanda was accommodative enough, there would be no reason for Rwandan nationals to go and fight the government of Rwanda from the DRC. If Uganda was accommodative enough, there would be no reason for the ADF to be in the DRC. So I think that we need to begin to address the overall democratic structure in the region and make sure that as we strengthen the government in Kinshasa, we must be able to address some of the internal problems in these countries that have given us rise or justification to go and get involved in the DRC. There should not be an ADF in the Congo, there should not be an FDLR in the DRC. No, because if these governments in Kampala and Kigali had their houses in order, that wouldn't arise. That is what I think should be done in the case of the DRC. Thirdly, you see, this posturing about this is being a homegrown process, you then begin to, undermine the UN, you don't even mention their name in your communique, is false, because we know very well that the summit in Kampala preceded frantic diplomatic efforts in the region that included American efforts. Hillary Clinton came here precisely to discuss some of those issues. But we also know that at the end of last month, President Kabila went to Angola. So did President Museveni. There have been efforts around the region to solve these problems. All of this is not really a homegrown process, but forces coming in from outside this region to determine what we actually should be doing in the region, which in my view is false.
To start with, Mr. Opiyo is entitled to his views, and the beauty of it, being a democracy, you go back home and sleep like a baby. But the fact that this is homegrown is not irrefutable, because I know how this whole thing started. This M223, that kind of thing. But the idea to have this summit here began in the AU.
Yes, in Addis Ababa. That's when it was
That's where before anybody knew that Madam Clinton is coming here. And it was in a summit meeting, because President Museveni now is the chairperson of the Great Lakes Initiative. And that's why he called the summit to try to get a regional solution, borrowing from the Burundi process, borrowing from the intervention in Somalia, whereby regional actors again playing a key role. And the argument is that regional people are affected more and know better the issues. That the Americans may be supportive, that's okay, that's healthy, but it is a regional, the dynamic is, there's a very strong internal dynamic in this thing. Now secondly, not any political organization is legitimate. For example, why was Bin Laden not accommodated from where he came from? Jamir Mukulu and the ADF, these are criminals. I thought this man stood for human rights. They killed people in Chichwamba. Now, did they kill the school children in Chichwamba Technical College because of lack of accommodation? What crime did those young boys commit to be burnt in the dormitory in Chichwamba? As an example. Or the Interahamwe.
I didn't miss my
Please let me no. I didn't talk with you. The Interahamwe,
You missed my
when they conducted the genocide. Now, are those the kind of elements? Because even now in Germany, Nazis are banned from operating, or fascists in Japan,
Completely missed my
or the Ku Klux Klan. You can't say in America on a Ku Klux Klan kind of banner, whatever it is,
Right.
political platform. So ADF and Interahamwe have no legitimate political whatever. Now,
I'm not saying that
on the issue of
In a minute, as a move.
in a minute, I think this was a very healthy situation. But even empowerment he's talking about, which is justifiable, having a healthy political system and so forth, occurs under a given context. For example, when there was a mutiny in 65 in Uganda and Tanzania and whatever, in what happened in mainly so where there were better successes in Kenya and Tanganyika, both Nyerere and Mzee Kenyatta. Even in Uganda here, the British sent forces to disarm these people. But mainly so in Kenya and Tanzania, the leadership there used that presence to disarm those forces and reform their national armies. Right. Because now in the Congo, there's a problem. So what do? Do we just pray to God and say that there is a democracy in Congo? That is why there is need to have an international effort. For example, like in Mali, there are Al-Qaeda's there. So there must be an international effort to go in, a regional force to go in and disarm those elements and ensure that the democracy is talking about can take root.
Patrick,
Thank you very much. This issue of Congo, name it, to me, it's like a bath. Should you suggest that you want to go bathing and you pour out on your head, the hands have to feel, the chest has, the back, so are the legs. You find that this issue cannot be avoided, that you find Congo has had interventions in the neighboring country, you find Uganda has participated in a country, you find Rwanda has participated in wars around. So until we address the issue of geopolitics and strategic leadership in the country, we shall arrive at a solution that will reduce the implications. But it's not yet to end.
How do we do that?
We can solve that by correcting leadership deficits. To me, I think there is an issue of a political ego and dominance in this Great Lakes region, not by the ADF, by the leaders. Because he who has opportunity,
some names, one or two.
I cannot name names for the sake of the listeners to really contribute and offer us names, but this is in black and white, it is in the glasses, that the leaders of the Great Lakes region cannot look up to the AU to offer a solution, but the solution should start with themselves, and they know the problems that are causing all these issues. Look at the refugees.
If I can amplify your point, I think the point that we make is not that ADF is legitimate. It's not that the international are legitimate.
So we should accommodate them.
But that there are reasons why they exist. And those reasons we must address.
I'm sure just from that one, there must have been reasons as to why Hitler existed.
If I can make my point, sir.
And we can't say that we can justify Hitler's being but there must have been reasons. That's why Adolf Hitler was in power with the Nazis.
Gives rise to the ADF are the reasons that we must address. It is the democratic deficit we must
What
address.
deficit? There are elections going on all the time. Even by-elections are being won by the opposition. So what deficit?
Nicholas, you can conclude your point.
I can see your hatred or dislike of
Jamil Mukulu for sure.
and his group.
I can't have first.
But that they have grievances that haven't been addressed, that they must be addressed. That any country that is democratic must take.
I definitely hate fascists.
You're saying the government that was once a rebel outfit should listen to rebels?
Fascists and Al-Qaeda.
They should.
There are also a government that was once a rebel group should listen to rebels because it knows their pain.
Well, many rebels in government, as you know very well. Many rebels in government.
Edmond.
Thank you very much, dear guys. Mr. Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the President, very impatient tonight and very abrasive. Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, Legal Consultant at AKIJUL and also pundit on social and political affairs, and Mr. Patrick Kaboyo, Chairman of the Anti-Corruption Coalition in Uganda, also member of the CEDU Election Monitoring Team. Thank you very much for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond Kizito, always in the video. Spectrum will be back on Monday. Up next is the news in English, and have a blessed weekend.
Hello, Mommy. I need nice shoes, a chocolate bar, a toy phone, yes, yes.
virtually sweetie. With Western Union, shopping is done.
What does Christmas mean to you? Is it giving, celebration, or sharing? With Western Union, this Christmas is coming early. Record 3 transactions at the said location, fill in a coupon, and enter a draw to participate in the Western Union Trolley Dash and have a chance to win up to 3